Welcome back, everyone, to Ed Up Edge, where we discuss all things career education, leadership, and life hacks. Hear from some of the most amazing and insightful guests in higher education. Let's go. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Ed Up Edge, where we talk about all things career education, leadership, and life hacks. And I am your host, Kathy Belletti. Today is going to be a lot of fun because we are talking about marketing. Okay, that is at the very beginning of the enrollment funnel before we even hit admissions. So, what you guys do at the front end is critical, and some schools are still lost in the sauce. Okay, so today I have with me Rustam.
Rustam.
Irani. Okay. He is the president at RGI Marketing and Consulting. And if I'm not mistaken, you work with a lot of career schools, correct?
I do. Yes,
All
ma'am.
right.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Rustam.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So tell us a little bit about your background. Where did it all begin for you? Did you accidentally fall into marketing?
I accidentally fell into marketing as well as education.
Get out.
So my background, actually, my undergrad's in civil engineering. So I'm actually a recovering engineer. I tell people, turned
Recovery.
marketer. But when I went to get my MBA, I did a concentration in marketing. I just had, just an interest in it, and this was quite a while ago, so I won't go into that, but 25 years ago or so.
Wow.
But the great thing was, the engineering company where I was working at, the CEO said, "Hey, Rustam, you're doing marketing. You're getting your MBA. Help us build a marketing plan. We don't have one. Help us build a website." They didn't have a website at that time, right? We're talking 2000. That was where I really kind of got to really do some marketing. And that was while I was still in school, which is really cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So fast forward to about 2008, I had joined an agency, and our largest client at that time was a pretty large online for-profit institution, ITT. Which unfortunately they're no longer around,
Yeah.
but it was a huge opportunity to jump in and learn more about the education space, and so that was about 2008. So that's when I jumped into the education side of marketing. And then from there, I led marketing at a pretty large allied health institution.
Mhm.
And then I've also had some experience in the traditional side as well, working for a couple OPMs on that side.
Wow. So you actually were given an opportunity of a lifetime that most people don't get in the very beginning. They basically let you experiment.
That was the coolest experience ever. I'm
Wow.
so grateful to that CEO because that's exactly what I did. I opened up my text board, Kathy, and I said, my textbook, sorry.
Uh-huh.
I opened up my textbook and I said, okay, what is SWOT analysis? Let's do a SWOT analysis. And this back then it was like, 2000. So Google was still around, but I was doing all the research online, trying to find, and for engineering, it wasn't really marketing wasn't a big thing.
Yeah.
So it was just really fascinating, but I'm so, so grateful because I literally was taking stuff out of a textbook and applying it to the real world. I
Get
mean,
out.
how much cooler could that be, right? So I'm very, very blessed and grateful for that first experience for sure.
It only takes one person to believe in you and give you a
100%.
shot, right? So, that
100%.
you're like a testimony for those of people out there who are trying to get to the next level. What inspired you to actually start RGI Marketing and Consulting?
Yeah, so there's really two sides to the inspiration on that.
Mhm.
So I grew up with a family of entrepreneurs. My mom owned a art and frame studio in Delray Beach, Florida, and then my dad had a refrigeration and air conditioning business until he could no longer work. So kind of came up in that kind of entrepreneurial type family setting. But for me, it was more about really kind of stepping out from the corporate side and spending a
Mm.
little bit more time with family. And so it allowed me the ability to kind of control my time and a bit more because I was needing to be a little more helpful at the house. Really, that's
Got it.
kind of what made me step out. And that's been kind of the core and root of, who we are, and our values as an organization is truly family first.
I
So
love
that's
that.
really what it is. Yeah.
I love that. That life, that work-life balance. There's nothing better than that at
Perfect.
all.
Yeah.
Oh man. So let's get into enrollment. Okay. What are some of the biggest enrollment challenges that institutions are facing today, especially with the increased competition, right? And the enrollment cliff?
Yeah, we're having these types of conversations all the time with
Mm-hmm.
clients, because the reality is it's a competitive landscape, right? And the idea behind it is there is a bit of a decline, right? We've heard about the enrollment cliff. I think it's like a 15% decline in college bound students year over year. And so that's pretty significant
Mm-hmm.
when you think about that. So there's less students that are looking to go back to school. And then the other side of that, which is interesting, is there's more options than ever, right?
Yeah.
There's certificate programs. Should I go get my undergrad? Should I just do a certificate? Should I do a boot camp?
Mm-hmm.
So I also was at Trilogy, where we partnered with over 40 universities in building out boot camps for
Wow.
those universities. And so that was a whole nother avenue for really students to come out, get the skills necessary, the job ready skills necessary to go into market and start contributing, right, to the community, to society. And then you have trade schools, career colleges, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we all know, like, yeah, technology is evolving, AI, there's a lot of that, but at the end of the day, there's still a lot of manual based opportunities and some pretty amazing career paths outside of a
Mm-hmm.
4 year degree, or
Yeah.
in that path. And I know that very well because, like I said, my dad owned a refrigeration and air conditioning business,
Yeah.
right? I spent my Saturdays with him. We all did. My brothers and I. We all had like these 3 year period where we were dad's helper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every Saturday. So while my friends were watching, cartoons back then on Saturday mornings, I was out holding a screwdriver or taking apart a condenser. But yeah, I just think there's so much more opportunity out there with different paths, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's a decline. And then lastly, I would say there's definitely also a bit of a challenge in, like, you know, the trust component. Like, is college
Yeah.
right? Is it worth it? What's worth it, and so on.
You know what? You brought up a really good point. Do you feel, in your opinion, that guidance counselors are still acting as those gatekeepers when it comes to certificate programs? Because I remember when I was working out of a school and we had to do high school events, these guidance counselors, the minute you talk about vocational or career schools, they're like, stop. Yeah, we're only, marketing to 4 year universities because that's where we think our students have the best opportunity. Do you think there's a shift, or do you think for the most part, guidance counselors are still all for 4 year universities?
You know, I do believe there's a shift happening. And I'm not in it day to day, like
Yeah.
in front of a lot of these high school counselors, but what I am hearing through our clients, as well, in the trade school space or career college space, is some of these career paths, you can come out and have some incredible opportunities with, right? Like, you could make six figures plus.
Yeah.
And not only that, you have so many opportunities to take that and create businesses out of it, right? And
Absolutely.
create legacy opportunities for your family and for others. And so I think there's a lot more that's being kind of discussed as far as career
Hmm.
paths there, and opportunities. And the reality is, some of these fields are just incredible, right? Incredible opportunities.
Absolutely. What about leaders? How can they identify the signs that their current strategies aren't working, besides the fact that no one is coming to their website and completing lead forms?
um, yeah, that's a good question. I think, like, everything. And again, I've been very fortunate. I've had some incredible leaders,
Hmm.
in my career, and you know, basically at the end of the day, it boils down to your cost per whatever that metric is, right? Like cost per student, right?
Hmm.
So when you look at, your strategies, when you look at your overall kind of struggles potentially, you've got to kind of really map it back to what are those core goals that you have for your
Hmm.
institution. I've seen schools that have gotten, basically they've said, hey, we've got to move online. We've got to create online programs, or this is the latest program offering. Let's just throw it into our mix. And a lot of times those things don't work out.
Yeah.
So I think it's like really understanding your core metrics, your core ROI, so you can understand like where are those struggles, where are things not really aligning with who we are as an institution, our
Hmm.
mission, our vision, like those things. I think those things are kind of critical to really understanding. And then once you get a good lay of that, then it's like, all right, where do we want to continue to invest and grow as an institution, and what's working and what's not?
Yeah, especially when it comes to programs that are not performing well, right? I look
Yep.
at some websites and it's like, okay, this website is all about the school, but it's not really speaking to the students. If I wanted to go back to college, it's like I look at a lot of these sites and I'm like, where's the student in the marketing? Is I'm the top 10, we're the greatest in the region, X, Y, and Z. And like students, they don't care unless they understand, what's really in it for them.
You nailed it. Like you obviously, Kathy, you get it from that perspective, because I know on your side, right?
Yeah.
On the admission side, like you want to have conversations with students that understand what you're all about, that feel like this could be a great institution for them, that this could be a great opportunity for them to, basically increase their level of knowledge and get into a career field that could be very fruitful for them, for their
Mhm.
family, and so on. And so, like, are we positioning that up front? Are we messaging in that? Like at the end of the day, and I've been in many of these conversations where it's like, we may feel the website should have certain stuff on it, but
Yeah.
we're not the end user, right?
Yeah.
So really kind of pulling yourself outside of that and getting that feedback from those students and people who are coming, or prospective students that are coming to the website. Like they're the hero of the story, right? It's the
Yeah.
student that's the hero. It's not you. It's not anybody within your organization, right? It's
Mhm.
really the students, and we've been there in some sort of fashion, right?
Yeah.
So
What are some ways that you think that like a marketing company can work with a school to really attract the students that they're actually looking for? Like if you put yourself in the consumer seat, right, which is like a
yeah,
no word in higher education.
yeah.
Like what advice do you have to some of these leaders as far as the information that should go on their website that would appeal to the students that they're trying to attract?
Yeah, and this all goes back to there's a great kind of framework. It's called the
Mhm.
story brand framework.
Mhm.
And really what this framework does is it really gets you to kind of step back and say, okay, the student is the hero of our story. How do we create messaging? How do we create an experience that gives this person the ability to come in, experience, what's most important to them, and to see if this is truly the right fit, right? And then for us as well, when we're doing that, we're making sure that they're coming in, and if they are going through the steps and filling out a form and getting in touch with them, they're pretty qualified, right?
Mm.
Or they're just looking for a bit more information. And there's a lot of alignment there. So I think there are a couple core things. And actually, I think I just posted about this a LinkedIn post this week, but like making sure like your stories are authentic, right?
Mm.
Real, true student stories that are authentic. We had a campaign once at a school where we actually hand delivered and the graduate didn't know this, but we hand delivered diplomas to some of the graduates in the area, and
Wow.
we brought balloons. We had a van. We made like a little sticker for the side of the van. And it was just such a cool experience, right? But we really built that into the story. Like, it doesn't just end after they graduate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's very powerful, right? Making sure the information you have on your site is relevant, is practical, like not hiding things, 15 15 steps to try to figure out, like, what's the credit cost per credit hour, right? What does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is a potential career path, right? Obviously, if I'm coming to your website and I'm looking to upskill or change my career and looking to go back to school, what does that mean? What are the different career paths? Like, a lot of times that gets hidden,
Yeah.
but that's so important, right? And lastly, I would say, like, the community connection. Like, it's so important to say, okay, do I want to be a part of this community?
Mm-hmm.
Does this make sense? Does this institution kind of fit who? And I've seen that, and you've probably heard this, and you've heard this on multiple calls as well, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure. It's like when a student feels like they're a part of the culture and it's a good fit from that perspective, and they get along with the instructors and the person who's on the phone with them, like, it just resonates. That's powerful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think those are
Absolutely.
some of the ways. Yeah, for sure.
There's so many different directions that we can go because sometimes I feel that admissions teams are disconnected from marketing, right?
Uh,
So you guys are doing everything at the front to make sure that students feel like they're a part of the institution by just looking at the website. But then they get to admissions and the advisors are not asking those questions as far as, okay, what intrigued you to actually log on and fill out a lead form? What was it about our website? Oh, well, I love the students who were actually, in the phlebotomy labs. Okay, so you like the hands-on aspect. That conversation is missing. And when it comes to social proof, another point that you made, those testimonials, they are so critical, but I think that some of the testimonials are focused on the wrong thing. Right? We're always talking about the students who were like the straight A students. Everything was put together well, like in a nice little box with a bow on it. But that's not the average student. And do you feel that schools are afraid to put those authentic stories on a website? Like, you know what? I was abused before I came to school, or I'm a single mom who's living in a bad neighborhood, and this is how I made it through.
you know, I wouldn't say they're afraid. I think, like, look, there is definitely, you've got, if it's out there on the web, you've got to have some level of filtering, right?
Hmm.
Um, you can't just post a
Yeah.
TikTok video of somebody reviewing, their experience. But I can tell you, like, at some of the graduations that I've been to, like, those stories are just so powerful, so impactful. And when you can even get a little bit of that snippet, and I've seen schools do this really, really well, where they
Hmm.
share incredible, authentic stories of some of the struggles, overcoming those struggles, and kind of the successes. So I have seen it. I wouldn't say schools are necessarily scared of it, but what I think is, it takes effort. Like, you've got to have, the time to kind of pull this together. It takes time, it takes effort, and to really do it well,
Yeah.
you've got to have a team behind that to do that. And I think that's what is a bit of a challenge sometimes. Not so much, I would say, that the school is reluctant to maybe
Hmm.
share those stories. But man, I've seen some incredibly powerful stories on websites.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think it's a good idea to take those graduation stories and then move them to the front, right? Because I feel like sometimes when a student goes onto a website, they're looking at the students who look polished and they're like, that's not me. So I'm not going to fit in. I'm not going to be able to be successful, not realizing that those students may appear that way. But when they came in for that first interview, they were broken, and it's because of the staff at the school that they're where they are now.
A hundred
It
percent.
has to resonate.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's very, very powerful. And I have seen some very powerful stories like that on
Mhm.
some front pages of some websites. So yeah, there's definitely schools that are doing a great job of it. But again, there's a lot that unfortunately, either don't have the resources, or B,
Yeah.
it's just hiding somewhere else, or
Mhm.
maybe they're a little afraid of it. But But I
Mm-hmm.
think when you're at that point where you've got these stories, it's just so powerful to share these things because it makes it real. It just is a big life changing decision. This isn't.
Yeah.
It's not a small investment, but it's not like buying a car, right? I mean, this is
Mm-hmm.
something that is incredibly impactful for your career trajectory for work that you may be doing for the next 30, 40, 50 years, right?
Yeah.
So it's just such a powerful way to kind of give the potential student like an opportunity to see what this could mean and what could it be like.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So
Yeah.
let's talk about red flags. So as many institutions work with so many different marketing companies, right? What are some of the red flags that may indicate that this company has no idea what is going on? They are totally lost in the sauce. They have no idea what's happening. Do you have any horror stories?
So I hope there are no companies that are completely lost in the sauce. Hopefully, there are no agencies that are completely lost in the sauce. I think, for the most part, most agencies have, they have the best intentions, and that's to help, find students and help schools grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a couple red flags right off the bat, that I typically see, and we had this happen with one of our accounts and clients is, when an agency kind of builds everything in their control, they build the Google accounts under their control, they build
Mm,
all of these things under their own control, their assets, everything. And basically, the school like would just give them a budget and say, okay, you guys manage everything. And I think one of the challenges that with that, and we went through this when, if things aren't working well and you're looking to switch, it's not that easy. And the
mm,
reality is, like, if I'm a school, like, it's very easy to set up everything under our accounts and then have
yeah.
an agency fully manage it. So I would say that's typically, and again, it may not be malicious or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
we've seen it where it can be a huge challenge. If I was at school, I'd want to control all my accounts. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do that. Um, I think the other big thing, and I've seen this in the past as well, is like, does the agency really understand the school, understand
Mm,
what it's like to run a school, understand what it's like to
yeah.
be in admissions? Have they sat down and listened to admissions phone calls with a prospective student that came in from a search campaign, right? Do they think about retention rates and grad rates? Basically, like, have they been in your shoes, right? Have
Yeah.
they sat in that shoe? And I think there's some agencies that are absolutely great at that. They understand it. They come from that pedigree. But I think there's also agencies that just like, came into it and they don't have that experience. And I think
Yeah.
that is a bit of a challenge. We once had a agency, incredible agency. Apparently, they won dozens of awards. I went and visited their office, which was in the Empire State Building, and beautiful views,
Nice.
amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but like, we rotated account managers every like 6 months. We had a new account manager on our account, and finally, I said, you know what? We're just going to take this in house. We're going to build a team in house. We did that, and we 5x'd our enrollments while
Wow.
decreasing our cost per start.
Yeah.
Not that they were a terrible agency. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, they rotated account managers and none of them came from the school side. So they didn't understand our
Wow.
programs as well as we did. They didn't ask the questions that we were asking,
Mm-hmm.
right? So those are just, I think those are kind of the core things, that I would say just to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah. So how does RGI marketing differ from other marketing agencies? Like, what is your process if a school is looking for help?
Yeah. So again, I think it goes back to what I was
Mm-hmm.
just saying. Like, we've been there, done that. We've been in those shoes, right? Um, And so at the end of the day, like, our conversations don't just stop at the click or lead level.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of our conversations goes down to the cost per enroll or cost per start level. And not only that, like, if we can get involved in what's happening in the admission side and the CRM side, we want to understand that, right? Not only that,
Yeah.
we look at retention, we look at grad rates, like, we get involved in those conversations that are beyond just a lead generator, right? That's not how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as kind of a growth partner, not
Yeah.
even kind of an agency. Like, I think agency has a certain stigma, but like for me, when we join and work with a school, like we truly jump in as kind of that growth partner, and really an extension of their team is how we see ourselves. Um, and we hold ourselves to the same metrics that they would hold themselves to, right? And
Yeah.
so that's, I think that's one area where we um, try to kind of just hone in and focus on kind of how we potentially differentiate.
Mm-hmm. It's important that you said you're like a partner, right? I think a lot of times when people think of a marketing agency, they think of lead generation, right? So, okay, get us some leads, and then it stops right there. And now we begin with admissions, and it goes on and on. And it's like marketing is so far away from the rest of the teams within the campus, right? So I love the fact that you said partner, because seldom do advisors even talk to marketing people, right? Or financial aid or career service or academics. It's like everybody's in their own box, but one thing is actually driving the other.
100%. Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities that I've seen in kind of our conversations with multiple schools,
Mm-hmm.
is the fact that sometimes marketing and admissions aren't aligned, and they're not on the same team. And when you
Yeah.
don't have that, that can be such a huge challenge,
Yeah.
because the last thing you need is fingers pointing at each other, right? Because then
Yep.
you're not both focused on the same goal, which is making sure you find the right student for the right program, and
Mm-hmm.
creating success, right, for that student. Um, and so I think that's a huge, huge challenge because if those goals aren't aligned, like our goals when I was on the school side, our goals were always aligned with admissions. At the end of the day, we
Mm-hmm.
had start goals, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we were both held accountable to that, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't raise our hand and say, "Hey, we sent you great leads. It's your fault." Like,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, our team's marketing was also very much accountable for the start rates.
Yeah.
So I thought that was just, I mean, I think that's just the way it should be, because it creates alignment.
It definitely does. And I feel like in a lot of instances, the opposite is happening, right? So you have marketing saying, well, I'm giving you guys tons of leads. So your advisors are just not converting them. And then vice versa, the advisors are like, oh, they're giving us a bunch of garbage and junk leads that we can't do anything with
Yeah.
because they're not on the same page. So I love that. That's one thing that's really unique about RGI marketing. Are there any trends or innovations that are shaping enrollment and marketing strategies in higher education right now?
Yeah. I think, you know, look, it's continuing to be a very competitive landscape.
Mhm.
That's not changing. Um, Google's not getting any cheaper, right? It really isn't. And then there's multiple platforms that are coming in, right? So you've got folks that are doing searches on TikTok, right, to try
Yeah.
to figure out what's right for them and career paths. And I know this because I fill out almost I don't know how many forms a week I fill out, just kind of from a market research
Uh-huh.
perspective. But I'm always filling out forms, so I'm always getting these ads, and I'm also getting the engagement. Right, my For You page is like filled with career
Mhm.
school and school opportunities. But I think the costs are going to continue to increase. So what does that mean? That means like you've got to get smarter about your marketing efforts, and you've got to look across many different channels. You can't just buy leads. You can't just go and do Google.
Mhm.
You can't just rely on website traffic because even that's changing, like Google's algorithm. So I think like people need to continue to expand across many different channels and create like an omni-channel approach where it's like, all right, here's our interactions and our strategy for all of these different channels, and here's how they contribute to the overall. Um,
Mhm.
and then there's also ways to get smarter about, marketing efforts. So, for example, We've been part of like building out lead scoring models, right? Really understanding what that student looks like, that ideal student that's successful in our programs, and building a model that tells you like, hey, based on the demographics and even some of the consumer inputs of this potential student, here's the likelihood that they could be successful here.
Mm,
And so those are kind of ways to just get smarter and smarter about, making sure things are the right fit for both sides.
mm-hmm.
And then lastly, I mean, there's definitely ways to utilize, AI effectively.
Yeah.
There's so many great AI tools from market research perspective, even recommendations. I'm sure you've heard of like the operator kind of new open AI tool. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that literally can scan your website and give you recommendations on how to improve conversion rate optimization on your website and how to get more click-throughs on your website. Um,
Wow.
like it's very, very amazing to see. It's just fantastic to see kind of all of this stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but you still have to kind of put the effort to really understand
Exactly.
what you're telling the AI to do. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to continue to create efficiencies. And the more efficient you get, the better conversion rates you have on your website. Those are ways you can be more competitive, right? Bringing costs down and also finding those ideal students. And I think those are some of the ways where, like, you can definitely innovate and stay ahead of the game.
That's interesting because I remember a couple years back, you used to see all these marketing ads about make sure that you choose a platform and you just stick to that, right? And it's like some people are still left behind, right? Because now it's good for you to be on every single website. Try to stretch as much as you can. But what was sold a couple of years ago was the total opposite, right? So it may be the fact that some people are just confused and they're like, well, what is the right, direction to go?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you have to be investing in every platform,
Yeah.
but like, for Instagram, for example, like
Mhm.
there are definitely a lot of schools that are using Instagram in a really great way, showing those authentic student stories, showing those partnerships with like, for example, like if you're an HVAC school, showing a partnership with a tool company, right? That's
Yeah.
coming in and meeting with your students. That's powerful, right? That can be shared.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be, you don't have to spend in order to do those things. I think there's a lot of organic opportunities that are out there across many different platforms. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Love it.
Yeah.
So, Rustam, first of all, you have dropped some amazing, amazing gems. I hope that you guys are really taking notes, okay? Because his company really knows how to do this the correct way. Marketing is at the forefront of everything that goes on in your school. All right. But Rustam, do you have any final thoughts or advice for marketing or enrollment leaders struggling to optimize their strategies?
Yeah, again, it goes back to just really understanding your brand story,
Mm-hmm.
what your institution's all about. And then the other side of that is like, what's that student experience look like? When was the last
Yeah.
time you went through, filled out a form on your site, got the information, engaged with your admissions team, saw that full experience? Did you get a text message? Did you not get a text message? Was it aligned with who you are as an institution? And I think at the core of it, if you can just step back and audit that experience and really understand that experience, that is a huge step, because I've seen so many times where emails are broken, they're not going out,
Yeah.
these things aren't happening, and or they're not aligned with the messaging of the core values of the institution.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, I would say just this is the core of what you and I both believe in, and we
Mm-hmm.
talked a little bit about it, but your marketing and enrollment teams have to be aligned. That's the bottom line. They have to be rowing in the same direction, and they both have to be aligned on the same goals and metrics. And I think if you can get those two things in place, I think that's kind of that foundation for success, at least from a marketing perspective.
Absolutely. Use your resources. People are not using their
Yes.
resources the same way where you do so much research. I always tell advisors, have you ever called a school? Have you ever shopped a school? Call in at a school and see what that dialogue looks like. And I've had some advisors who did that and they're like, oh my gosh, their conversations are terrible. And I'm like, that's exactly how yours sound, right? But you never know what's out there until you utilize the resources that are available. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So, Rustam, tell everyone how to get in contact with you at RGI Marketing and Consulting if they need some help.
I appreciate that, Kathy.
Sure.
It's just Rustam at rgiconsulting.net. So RUSTAM at rgiconsulting.net. Or find me on LinkedIn. I try to be pretty active on LinkedIn as well. And I've got some resources on my website too. I think I have a audit checklist, and I've got other things. And if there's any way I can help, I'm happy to jump on a call.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. His information will be linked in the comments and the notes of this podcast. All right. It has been an absolute honor to speak with you again, Rustam. And thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Take care, everyone.